Well, right now, the country is nearing a potential inflection point as ICE raids to deport undocumented migrants and protest efforts to disrupt them both escalate nationwide. Earlier this week, the federal government rolled out a new recruiting effort. They're offering $50,000 signing bonuses, student loan forgiveness, and enhanced retirement benefits as they try to entice 10,000 new agents to join ICE's ranks. Their mission, according to the DHS press release, is to target the worst of the worst. But recent raids show them targeting cooks, grocery store clerks, even teenagers. On Wednesday, 11 workers were detained in the middle of their shifts at a pair of Mexican restaurants in Kansas City. It happened so fast, one witness says the burners on one of the stoves were left on. In New York, multiple employees were arrested at a popular Asian food market outside of Buffalo, forcing that market to shut down for the day. The store's attorney says it was targeted simply because it's an immigrant-owned business. But in the face of those kinds of raids, resistance is also growing. In New Haven, 150 people rallied in support of an 18-year-old high school junior who was swept up in a workplace raid and transferred to a massive immigration facility nearly 1,500 miles south in Louisiana. From coast to coast, volunteer groups are popping up to warn people when ICE might be coming. Here's what one man told our own Morgan Radford.
If there is someone being detained, we take their information, we let them know their rights, and then we try to provide a safety net around their family.
It's the kind of resistance just chronicled by the New York Times columnist and MSNBC political analyst Michelle Goldberg, who joins me now, along with James Sample, law professor at Hofstra. Good to have both of you here. Michelle, when the administration announced this recruiting push and that the budget was going to go from about $8 billion to $27.7 billion, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said in a press release this is a defining moment in our nation's history. And I wonder if you think it is on both sides.
I mean, yeah, maybe that's the only thing that Kristi Noem has ever said that I agree with her about. I do think this is a defining moment in our nation's history. What we have are men in civilian clothes and masks who often refuse to show ID, who are grabbing people off the streets and throwing them into the back of vehicles. They have grabbed people, they're grabbing people who are undocumented, but they're also grabbing people who are here legally. And, in some cases, they have grabbed American citizens. And the more of them there are, and the more pressure there is on them to ramp up their numbers, I think the more such abuses we'll see. In New York City, where I live and I've spent time reporting, a lot of the immigration arrests are focused on the immigration courts. They're arresting people when they show up for their asylum hearings, even if judges ask people to come back for further proceedings, which I think shows the lie when the administration says that they're targeting the worst of the worst. I mean, these are people who are law-abiding by definition, or who at least are trying their best to follow the law of our immigration system.
You noted in your column, which I just found incredibly compelling, I immediately texted it to my executive producer. The resistance came out swinging in the first Trump administration, right, with the women's marches all over the country. But today, you use as an example of the resistance the story of Elizabeth Castillo. She's a working mom. She was not overtly political. She voted. But then she saw what was happening to her neighbors and essentially just couldn't take it anymore. Tell us about her and what she started.
Well, sure. So I found her a kind of fascinating and inspiring person. And basically, like you said, she's a mother of 5, very busy with her job and her kids, but she lives in Pasadena, just outside of LA. And when ICE came to her neighborhood, she started seeing them take people away. They raided her building and took people away. She saw people were taken away from a nearby donut shop. And so at first, she just started sort of acting on her own. She got a megaphone. When she saw ICE vehicles in the neighborhood, she would follow them, shouting for people to get inside and honking her horn. She got up early and started patrolling her own apartment complex. Then she knocked on the door of the job center run by a group called the National Day Laborers Organizing Network. And they helped her with some of her neighbors set up what they call the Community Defense Corner. And so they have a canopy tent on a corner in a part of Pasadena with a lot of immigrants. And it's basically a kind of anti-ICE command center where they field tips, they hand out literature, know your rights literature, but also photographs of ICE agents and ICE vehicles that have been seen in the neighborhood, whistles, friendship bracelets with the phone numbers of immigrants' rights groups sewn in. And these have spread. And so now there's other community defense corners in other parts of Pasadena and Los Angeles. And it's, this is only one small part of what's happening. You also have people staking out Home Depots, adopting a Home Depot so that they can warn the day laborers who gather there if ICE is coming. You have, as I said, the people coming to the courts to provide whatever assistance they can to people before they're dragged away by these agents. And so I think all over the country, you're seeing these efforts by people who want to find a way to do something tangible.
Yeah, and the question is, do they have protection? Any kind of protester, whether it's somebody who's just standing there and protesting, as we saw with those high school kids, that their classmate had been taken away 1,500 miles away to an immigration detention center in Louisiana, or someone who decides, I might go around door to door with a megaphone and start warning people.
The protection that they have, Chris, is the First Amendment. That is as core to the First Amendment as you can get. That is political speech. That is exercising the freedom of expression to express disagreement with the government. That is as core to the First Amendment as one can get. They have the right to film. They have the right to distribute literature. What they don't have the right to do is to interfere with law enforcement. Now, that is a fuzzy line, and we have seen that line get tested. Even right here in New York City, just days before the mayoral primary, when Brad Lander, literally in immigration court, where, as Michelle says, individuals are going because they are not the worst of the worst. They are, on the contrary, individuals who are trying to do the right thing. They are trying literally to comply with the law. And then you see ICE bootstrapping those efforts and taking advantage of essentially turning immigration court into a trap, not for the worst of the worst, but for those who are trying to comply with the law. But the answer to your question is yes, absolutely. The protection for protesters is that is the right that they have under the First Amendment.
So let's talk about the people actually being arrested. Axios has a piece out about how many people just seem to disappear, like their families or friends don't know where they are. They are arrested so quickly they're leaving property behind, which sometimes disappears also. Their pets are left, dogs and cats. We've seen reports from animal shelters that people are bringing animals in because they've been left behind. In one case, a man says his gardeners were arrested and they didn't even have time to shut off their lawnmower. If you're gone, your family can't find you, what can you even do? What are the legal options?
Certainly the legal options in those situations are so sparse, right? Because if you don't know where the individual's been taken and the individual doesn't understand the process that is taking place, it is so difficult. And if you think about, if the administration has this goal of let's deport 11 million people, the primary constraints for doing that are resource constraints. The 10,000 additional agents that you mentioned that that ICE is seeking to hire solves part of that. The circumvention of process, the judicial process, solves some of those resource constraints. And so then you're left with only the resistance as the resistance itself, because the structural resistance that has been there historically is about to go away. The combined funding of ICE under the One Big Beautiful Bill, the funding for ICE is going to exceed the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, and the U.S. Marshals Service combined. So when you ask the question, what is an individual to do against an apparatus with that power? It's a very, very difficult question. The answer is do everything you can. That's tough to execute.
I wonder, and we're out of time here, Michelle, but I have to ask this question. When you talk to some of these folks, including Ms. Castillo, do they feel daunted? Do they feel empowered? Because going up against what we just heard and what you reported in that column, the money and the manpower, when you're one person or you're a group of people in your neighborhood, must, at least at some point, seem a little overwhelming?
Well, I think they feel empowered. I mean, and it's overwhelming, but if you can help one person or one of your neighbors, then that is, certainly better than screaming into the void of social media. And, these people are being disappeared into this sort of black hole. So one very tangible thing you can do is if somebody's going to be arrested, you can get their immigration ID number and their emergency contact information, let their family know where they are and follow them through the system. I mean, so there is really a place for volunteers to be able to make a real difference in individual people's lives, even if they can't stop this kind of Leviathan that's coming.